We didn't count calories. We didn't fear fat. And yet somehow we were effortlessly skinny in the 1960s without even trying. What quiet secret did we lose when we traded home-cooked meals for snacks, shortcuts, and supersized living? She never owned a scale, never read a nutrition label, never stepped foot in a gym, but she wore the same dress size for 40 years. They ate real butter, bacon for breakfast, everything we've been told to avoid. Yet somehow they lived in bodies we can only dream of having. What invisible wisdom kept entire generations effortlessly thin? The answer will change everything you think you know about weight and health. Meals with no seconds. In 1955, when Mom called you for dinner, you got one plate, one serving, one chance to fill up on what was carefully portioned for a family of 6. There was no going back for more because there wasn't more to go back for. Every piece of chicken, every spoonful of mashed potatoes, every green bean had been calculated to feed everyone at that table with maybe, just maybe, enough left over for Dad's lunch tomorrow. Your grandmother didn't serve family style because she was trying to control portions. She served exactly what each person needed because that's all there was. Waste wasn't just discouraged. It was impossible. Children learned hunger and satisfaction in their proper proportions. When your plate was empty, dinner was over. Your body learned to be grateful for what it received and to make that fuel last until the next meal. If you were still hungry, you were told to drink water and wait until morning. Your stomach learned its limits. Your appetite learned discipline. And somehow, miraculously, you felt satisfied with what you got. Physical labor as exercise. Before 1980, most American men left the house each morning to work with their hands, their backs, their whole bodies. Factory workers lifted and carried for 8 hours straight. Construction workers built America one brick at a time. Farmers worked from sunrise to sunset. Women ran households that would exhaust a modern personal trainer. They scrubbed floors on their hands and knees, hung wet laundry that weighed 30 pounds, kneaded bread dough until their arms ached, carried groceries home in their arms. This wasn't exercise. This was life. Bodies stayed strong because strength was required just to get through the day. Muscles stayed lean because they were used from morning until night. House chores burned calories. Monday was a wash day. Tuesday was ironing. Wednesday was baking. Thursday was deep cleaning. Friday was market day. Saturday was for mending and repairs. Sunday was for rest, but only after a big family meal had been prepared from scratch. Your grandmother's weekly routine would have burned more calories than a modern marathon runner, scrubbing clothes by hand, wringing them out, hanging them to dry, then taking them down and ironing every piece, including the bed sheets. Cleaning the house meant moving every piece of furniture to sweep and mop underneath. It meant beating rugs outside until no dust remained. It meant washing windows by hand, inside and out, until they sparkled. Eating smaller portions. If you could see a dinner plate from 1960 next to one from today, you'd think the old one belonged to a child. Portions were smaller because they had to be. Meat was expensive. Fresh vegetables were seasonal. Everything had to stretch. A large soda in 1955 was 8 ounces, smaller than today's small. A candy bar was a thin sliver that you saved for special occasions. A restaurant meal was a rare treat, not a twice-weekly habit. Your body learned to feel satisfied with less because less was normal. Hunger pangs between meals weren't a crisis. They were expected. You ate when it was time to eat, and you ate exactly what was put in front of you. Children who asked for more were reminded of the starving children in Europe. Adults who overate were wasting precious resources. Portion control wasn't a diet strategy. It was a moral responsibility. Your stomach adapted to smaller amounts. Your brain learned to register fullness sooner. Your metabolism learned to be efficient with what it received. When food was precious, every bite counted. When portions were appropriate, bodies stayed appropriate too. Walking was a lifestyle. In 1965, the average American walked 3 miles every single day. Not for exercise, but just to live, to get to the bus stop, to go to the corner market, to visit neighbors, to get to church. Cars were for long distances and special occasions. For everything else, you used your feet. Children walked to school, often more than a mile each way, in groups, unsupervised, through all kinds of weather. Shopping meant walking from store to store. The baker, the butcher, the grocer were all in different places. You couldn't get everything under one roof, so you walked from shop to shop, carrying your purchases home in your arms. Your legs stayed strong because they carried you everywhere. Your heart stayed healthy because it pumped hard multiple times every day. Walking wasn't exercise. It was simply how you moved through the world. No constant snacking. Between breakfast and lunch, you ate nothing. Between lunch and dinner, you ate nothing. After dinner, the kitchen closed until morning. This wasn't cruelty. This was simply how families lived. Snacks were for special occasions. A piece of fruit if you were truly hungry, maybe a slice of bread with butter if you'd been working especially hard. But the idea of eating every 2 hours, of always having something in your mouth, was completely foreign. Your body learned to run on 3 meals a day. It learned to use stored energy between meals. It learned the difference between hunger and boredom, between needing food and wanting food. Children who complained of hunger between meals were told to wait. Their bodies adapted. Their metabolism learned to be efficient, to make fuel last, to burn fat when food wasn't available. There were no vending machines, no pantries full of chips and cookies, no drive-thrus on every corner. If you wanted to eat outside of mealtime, you had to make it yourself, and that effort usually wasn't worth it. Your appetite had rhythm, your hunger had meaning, and your body knew exactly when to expect fuel. Limited processed foods. In 1950, processed food meant canned vegetables and frozen peas. Everything else came to your kitchen in its natural state. Whole chickens that you cut up yourself, potatoes with dirt still clinging to them, flour that you measured and mixed by hand. Your grandmother knew exactly what was in every meal because she put it there herself. Salt, pepper, butter, lard. Simple ingredients that had been used for generations. No preservatives, no artificial colors, no high fructose corn syrup because it hadn't been invented yet. Food spoiled quickly, so you ate it fresh. Meals were planned around what needed to be used up before it went bad. Your body got nutrients in their natural forms, packaged by nature instead of by factories. When food came from farms instead of laboratories, bodies knew how to process it. Digestion was simpler, metabolism was cleaner, weight regulation happened naturally. Your pantry contained real ingredients, not food-like products. Your meals were made from scratch because there was no other option. And your body thrived on this honest, simple nourishment. School lunch simplicity. A school lunch in 1960 was a sandwich, an apple, and a small carton of milk. Maybe a cookie if it was Friday. The sandwich was made that morning with yesterday's leftover meat and bread that had been baked at home. Children ate their lunches in 20 minutes, then spent the rest of lunch period outside, running and playing until they were called back to class. Food was fuel for more play, not entertainment in itself. There were no vending machines, no soda, no candy bars, no chips. If you forgot your lunch, you went hungry until dinner, and you never forgot again. School cafeterias served simple, wholesome meals prepared by women who treated feeding children as a sacred responsibility. Portions were appropriate, nutrition was real, and every child cleaned their plate because waste wasn't tolerated. Drinking water, not soda. Soda was a special treat reserved for birthdays and holidays. The rest of the time you drank water from the tap, milk with meals, and coffee or tea for adults. That was it. Water came from a pitcher in the refrigerator or straight from the faucet. You drank it when you were thirsty, not for entertainment or energy or comfort. Your body learned to interpret thirst correctly, to be satisfied with simple hydration. A bottle of Coca-Cola was 6 ounces and cost a nickel, expensive enough that children had to save up for it. You savored every sip because you knew it would be weeks before you had another one. Your daily liquid calories came from milk, real milk with cream on top that gave you protein and calcium. Everything else was just water, clean and simple and free. There were no big gulps, no energy drinks, no flavored waters with artificial sweeteners. Your taste buds weren't constantly overstimulated by sugar and chemicals. Plain water actually tasted good because it was all you knew. Hydration was simple, thirst was honest, and your body stayed naturally balanced without liquid sugar coursing through your veins all day long. Meals cooked from scratch. Every meal began with raw ingredients and ended with dirty dishes. There was no other way. Breakfast was eggs cracked from the shell, bacon sliced from a slab, toast made from bread you'd baked on Sunday. Lunch was leftovers from last night's dinner, carefully saved and creatively transformed. Dinner was planned in the morning, shopped for in the afternoon, and prepared with love as the family gathered around the kitchen table. Cooking wasn't a hobby or a special occasion. It was a daily necessity that required skill, planning, and physical effort. Your mother's hands were strong from kneading, stirring, chopping, and lifting. Her body stayed trim from hours spent standing, reaching, and moving in the kitchen. Every meal was an accomplishment. Every bite represented someone's time, effort, and care. Food had value because someone had worked to transform raw ingredients into nourishment. Gardening and homegrown vegetables. Behind every house was a garden. Tomatoes, lettuce, beans, carrots, potatoes, whatever would grow in your climate and soil. Gardening wasn't a hobby. It was how you fed your family fresh vegetables all summer long. You spent hours each week digging, planting, weeding, watering, and harvesting. Your body stayed strong from squatting, reaching, and carrying. Your meals stayed healthy because the vegetables on your plate had been picked that afternoon. In August, when tomatoes were ripe, you ate tomatoes every day. In October, when squash was ready, you found a dozen ways to prepare it. You ate what was in season because that's all there was. Winter meant canned vegetables from your own garden, stored in the basement in jars you'd sealed yourself. Every meal contained the literal fruits of your own labor. Children learned where food came from by watching it grow. They understood that vegetables didn't magically appear in stores. They had to be planted, tended, and harvested with care. Limited meat. Meat was expensive, so it was used sparingly. A whole chicken fed a family of 6 for 2 meals, the good pieces for Sunday dinner, the rest transformed into soup stock and sandwich filling. Sunday roast was exactly that, a weekly special meal that everyone looked forward to. The rest of the week, meals centered around vegetables, beans, and starches with just enough meat to add flavor. Your grandmother could make a ham bone last for weeks, first carved for Easter dinner, then used to flavor beans, then simmered into soup, then finally thrown away only when it had given up every last bit of nutrition. Bodies thrived on this lower meat diet. Hearts stayed healthy. Digestive systems worked efficiently, and every bite of meat was savored because it was special. Protein came from eggs, milk, cheese, and beans as much as from meat. Meals were balanced naturally because expensive ingredients had to be stretched with cheaper ones. When meat was a luxury, not a given, portions stayed reasonable and appreciation stayed high. Quality mattered more than quantity. Fewer restaurants. Eating out was a special occasion, maybe once a month if you were lucky. The rest of the time, every meal was prepared and eaten at home. Restaurant food was a treat, not a convenience. When you did eat out, it was an event. You dressed up in your Sunday best. You minded your manners like your life depended on it. You ordered carefully and ate everything on your plate because you were spending precious money on something truly special. Restaurants weren't on every corner like today. There was maybe one diner in town, perhaps a fancy steakhouse for anniversaries, and that was it. Fast food chains were just beginning to appear, but they were novelties, not necessities. Home cooking was simply better than restaurant food. Your mother knew your preferences, your allergies, your needs. She could make your favorite meal exactly the way you liked it, using ingredients she trusted, seasoned to perfection after years of practice. The economics were simple. Eating out cost 5 times what cooking at home cost. For a family on a tight budget, restaurants were luxuries reserved for the most special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. This meant your palate was calibrated to home cooking. You appreciated simple, honest flavors. You didn't crave the excessive salt, sugar, and fat that restaurants use to make their food addictive. Your taste buds were satisfied by the natural flavors of real ingredients, prepared with care. No DoorDash. Cooking was daily. If you wanted to eat, you had to cook. There was no other option. No delivery, no drive-through, no microwave meals, no apps on your phone promising food in 30 minutes. Every single meal required planning, preparation, and cleanup. This daily necessity kept bodies active and minds focused on nutrition. You thought about food before you were hungry. You planned meals around what was available and affordable. You cooked even when you were tired, because the alternative was not eating. Your body stayed active just to keep yourself fed. Meal preparation was exercise disguised as necessity. Meals had rhythm and routine. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Your metabolism adapted to this schedule, burning efficiently and predictably. Your body knew when to expect fuel and prepared accordingly. Planning was everything. On Saturday, you planned the week's meals. On Sunday, you shopped for ingredients. Monday through Friday, you executed the plan. Every meal was thought through, prepared with purpose, and eaten with gratitude. Cooking skills were survival skills. Young women learned to cook before they learned to drive. Young men who couldn't cook learned quickly once they moved out. Everyone had to know how to transform raw ingredients into edible meals. The kitchen was the heart of the home because it had to be. 3 times a day, families gathered there for nourishment. Conversations happened over meal preparation. Children learned by watching. Traditions were passed down through recipes. When cooking was non-negotiable, it became automatic. When meal times were predictable, bodies stayed regulated. There were no shortcuts, no substitutes. Cook or go hungry. Kids, go play. Constant motion. After school, children were sent outside to play until dinner. No supervision, no scheduled activities. No screens, just hours of running, climbing, riding bikes, and inventing games that would exhaust a modern fitness trainer. Kids walked or biked everywhere, to friends' houses, to the corner store, to school, to church. Their bodies were in constant motion from the moment they woke up until they collapsed into bed at night, genuinely tired from a day of physical adventure. Summer meant swimming at the local pond, hiking through woods, building forts out of scrap wood, and exploring every inch of the neighborhood. Winter meant sledding down hills, ice skating on frozen ponds, having snowball fights that lasted for hours. Play was physical, demanding, and exhausting. Children didn't need organized sports because their entire day was athletic. They ran races, climbed trees, played tag, rode bikes for miles, and invented games that required speed, strength, and endurance. Mothers didn't worry about entertaining their children. Go outside and play was the standard response to boredom. Children were expected to amuse themselves, and they did, with activities that would challenge a modern athlete. Neighborhoods were safe enough for children to roam freely. They knew every tree worth climbing, every hill worth sledding, every shortcut through the woods. Their bodies adapted to this constant physical challenge by becoming naturally strong and lean. Television was limited to a few hours in the evening, and only after chores and homework were done. The rest of the day was spent in motion. Children fell asleep easily because they were genuinely exhausted from hours of physical play. Washing clothes by hand. Monday was wash day, and it began before sunrise. Your grandmother filled the large galvanized tub with water heated on the stove, added soap flakes, and began the grueling process that would consume her entire morning and leave her arms aching by noon. Each piece of clothing was scrubbed by hand against a washboard, the metal ridges designed to work out every speck of dirt through pure physical force. Heavy work pants, muddy from the fields, required 20 minutes of aggressive scrubbing. Delicate blouses needed gentler treatment, but still demanded careful attention to every stain and spot. The physical demands were enormous, lifting wet clothes that had absorbed gallons of water, wringing out each piece by hand, twisting and squeezing until your forearms burned, hauling heavy baskets of wet laundry outside to hang on lines that stretched across the entire backyard. Wringing was an art form that built incredible grip strength. You had to twist each garment until not another drop would fall, then twist it again. Your hands became strong enough to open any jar. Your forearms developed like a manual laborer's. Your shoulders broadened from the constant lifting and reaching. Hanging clothes meant climbing up and down from a step stool dozens of times, reaching high to pin heavy sheets and blankets, stretching clotheslines tight enough to hold the weight. Every piece had to be positioned perfectly to catch the wind and sun. In winter, clothes froze solid on the line. You'd bring in shirts and pants stiff as boards, hanging them near the stove to thaw and finish drying. The work never stopped, regardless of weather. Taking clothes down was another full-body workout. Folding heavy quilts and blankets while they were still on the line required strength and coordination. Carrying basket after basket of clean laundry back to the house worked every muscle in your back and legs. Backyard chores. Behind every house was a world of work that never ended. Chickens to feed, eggs to collect, gardens to tend, lawns to mow with push mowers that required real muscle power, and endless maintenance projects that kept families strong and properties productive. Saturday mornings began with feeding the chickens, collecting eggs still warm from the nest, and cleaning the coop. This meant hauling feed, scrubbing water containers, spreading fresh straw, and chasing escaped birds back into their pen. Children learned responsibility through these daily animal chores that couldn't be skipped or postponed. The vegetable garden demanded constant attention. Weeding meant hours on your hands and knees, pulling unwanted plants by their roots. Watering required carrying heavy buckets or dragging long hoses across uneven ground. Harvesting meant bending, reaching, and carrying baskets of produce that grew heavier as the day progressed. Mowing the lawn was a full-body workout with a heavy push mower that required strength and endurance. No motor to help, just your muscles against thick grass and uneven terrain. You developed powerful legs and a strong core just from keeping the yard presentable. Fruit trees needed pruning, spraying, and harvesting. This meant climbing ladders while carrying tools, reaching into thorny branches, and hauling heavy buckets of apples or pears. Your balance improved from working on ladders. Your grip strength developed from hanging onto branches and tools. Autumn brought leaf raking that would exhaust a modern fitness enthusiast. No leaf blowers, just rakes, muscle power, and hours of repetitive motion that worked your back, shoulders, and arms. Burning leaf piles meant tending fires, moving logs, and staying active throughout the day. Winter chores included shoveling snow, splitting firewood, and carrying loads of coal or wood to keep the house warm. Every storm meant hours of physical labor just to maintain access to your home and heat for your family. Spring cleaning extended to the entire property. Washing windows, painting fences, repairing damaged structures, and preparing garden beds for planting. Every surface, every corner, every inch of property received attention through manual labor. Sugar as a treat. Sugar was precious, expensive, and reserved for special occasions. A candy bar cost a week's allowance. A piece of cake appeared only on birthdays. Cookies were baked for holidays and church socials, not for daily snacking between meals. Your grandmother's sugar bowl held maybe 2 pounds of granulated sugar that had to last the entire month. Every teaspoon was measured carefully, used sparingly, and never wasted. Sweet treats were earned through good behavior, saved for celebrations, and savored slowly because you knew they wouldn't come again soon. Children who received a penny candy from the corner store would make it last for hours, taking tiny bites and letting each piece dissolve slowly on their tongue. The sweetness was so rare that it created genuine excitement and gratitude, not the casual expectation that modern children have for constant sugary snack. Birthday cakes were made from scratch once a year, using real butter, fresh eggs, and precious sugar that represented a significant portion of the family's grocery budget. The birthday child felt truly special because the cake represented sacrifice and love, not convenience from a box mix. Halloween meant one small bag of candy that was carefully rationed over weeks. Christmas brought homemade cookies and fudge that appeared only during the holiday season. Easter meant a single chocolate bunny or a small basket of jelly beans that had to last until summer. Your taste buds weren't constantly overwhelmed by artificial sweeteners and high fructose corn syrup. Natural sweetness from fresh fruit, an apple, a handful of berries, a piece of melon tasted incredibly satisfying because it was the sweetest thing you'd eaten all day. Dessert after dinner wasn't guaranteed. Most meals ended with the dinner plates being cleared and the family moving on to evening activities. When dessert did appear, it was a special surprise that everyone appreciated. Your body learned to function without constant sugar spikes and crashes. Your energy stayed stable throughout the day because you weren't riding the roller coaster of processed sweeteners. Your metabolism learned to burn fat efficiently because it wasn't constantly dealing with sugar overload. When sugar was truly special, it remained truly satisfying. When sweet treats were rare, they were treasured. When your palate wasn't overstimulated by artificial sweetness, natural flavors tasted incredible. The absence of constant sugar didn't feel like deprivation because you didn't know what you were missing. Your body adapted to steady energy levels, stable mood, and genuine satisfaction from real food instead of manufactured sweetness. Modern sugar consumption would have seemed impossible to your grandparents, not because they lacked willpower, because sugar simply wasn't available in the quantities we now consider home remedies instead of junk. When you felt sick, you didn't reach for processed snacks or sugary drinks to feel better. Your grandmother had a medicine cabinet filled with real remedies that actually healed your body, instead of temporarily masking symptoms with empty calories and artificial ingredients. A sore throat meant hot tea with real honey and fresh lemon, not candy lozenges packed with corn syrup and artificial flavors. The honey was raw, unprocessed, and actually had antimicrobial properties. The lemon provided real vitamin C. The hot water soothed inflammation naturally. Upset stomach got you ginger tea made from actual ginger root that your grandmother grated herself, or chamomile tea grown in her own garden, not ginger ale loaded with high fructose corn syrup and artificial ginger flavoring, but real medicine that calmed your digestive system without adding processed chemicals. A cold meant chicken soup made from a whole chicken with vegetables from the garden, simmered for hours until every nutrient had been extracted. Not canned soup with sodium levels that would shock a modern nutritionist, but real broth that provided protein, minerals, and genuine healing compounds. Headaches were treated with peppermint tea, cool cloth, and rest in a dark room. Not handfuls of pills washed down with caffeinated sodas, but natural remedies that addressed the root cause instead of just dulling the pain. Constipation meant prunes, extra water, and perhaps a tablespoon of castor oil. Not fiber supplements and processed foods with artificial additives, but simple solutions that had worked for generations. Coughs got you honey mixed with fresh lemon juice, maybe with a shot of whiskey for adults. The honey coated your throat, the lemon provided vitamin C, and the alcohol helped you sleep so your body could heal itself. Cuts and scrapes were cleaned with soap and water, then bandaged with clean cloth. Not antibiotic ointments and synthetic bandages, but simple cleanliness that prevented infection without introducing chemicals into your system. Your body learned to heal itself with real nutrition and genuine rest, not artificial props and processed shortcuts. When you were sick, you ate less, drank more water, and gave your digestive system a break instead of loading it with junk food that made healing harder. These weren't old wives' tales. They were time-tested treatments that actually work. Your grandmother's remedies supported your body's natural healing processes instead of interfering with them through artificial additives and processed ingredients. When comfort food meant real food prepared with love, not manufactured products designed to be addictive, your body could focus on healing instead of processing chemicals. Bone broths and stretch meals. Nothing was wasted, ever. When Sunday's chicken was carved, the bones went straight into a pot with water, onions, carrots, and celery. By Monday morning, you had liquid gold, rich, gelatinous bone broth that would stretch that one chicken into 3 more meals throughout the week. Your grandmother understood something modern nutritionists are just rediscovering. Bones contain minerals, collagen, and nutrients that your body craves. That pot of broth simmering on the back burner wasn't just frugal cooking. It was medicine that kept joints healthy, digestion strong, and skin glowing. Tuesday's soup used the broth with whatever vegetables were left in the root cellar. Wednesday's casserole stretched it further with rice or noodles. Thursday might bring chicken and dumplings, using every last bit of that original bird, plus the nutrients extracted from hours of slow simmering. A ham bone from Easter dinner would flavor beans for weeks. First, the good meat was carved off for sandwiches. Then the bone went into a pot with dried beans, creating protein-rich meals that cost pennies but provided complete nutrition. That single ham fed the family for a month in various forms. Beef bones from the butcher were practically free because most people didn't know their value. Your grandmother did. She'd roast them until they were deep brown, then simmer them for days, creating rich stock that formed the base for countless meals. The marrow was spread on toast, pure, concentrated nutrition that modern people pay premium prices for. Vegetable scraps never hit the garbage. Onion skins, carrot tops, celery leaves, potato peels, everything went into the stock pot. What seemed like waste was actually the foundation of the next meal, extracting nutrients from every part of every vegetable. Fish heads and bones were transformed into delicate broths for risotto and soup. Nothing that contained nutrition was discarded. Every meal built upon the last, creating layers of flavor and nutrition that made simple ingredients satisfying and nourishing. These stretch meals weren't poverty food. They were wisdom food. Bodies thrived on the deep nutrition extracted through slow cooking and careful use of every ingredient. Digestion was better because broths were gentle and healing. Joints stayed healthy because of the natural collagen and mineral. Modern supplements try to recreate what your grandmother's stock pot provided naturally. Bone broth, collagen peptides, mineral supplements, all attempting to replace the nutrition that came automatically when nothing was wasted and everything was used to its fullest potential. When every ingredient was precious, nothing was discarded. When bones were valued for their nutrients, not just their meat, meals provided deeper nourishment that kept bodies strong and healthy naturally. Sunday dinners as event. Sunday dinner wasn't just a meal. It was the week's most important gathering, carefully planned, lovingly prepared, and ceremoniously served to bring the entire family together around one table at exactly 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Saturday was spent in preparation. The good china was washed and polished. The dining room table was extended with extra leaves to accommodate everyone. The tablecloth was pressed. The silverware was shined. Every detail was perfect because Sunday dinner mattered more than any other meal of the week. The menu was traditional and elaborate, roast beef or chicken, mashed potatoes whipped with real butter and cream, vegetables from the garden prepared 3 different ways, fresh bread baked that morning, and a dessert that had been planned and prepared since Thursday. Everyone dressed up, Sunday clothes, polished shoes, hair combed and faces washed. Children who tried to come to the table in play clothes were sent back upstairs to change. This meal commanded respect through appearance and behavior. The cooking began early Sunday morning, right after church. The roast went in the oven at 10. Potatoes were peeled and ready to boil. Vegetables were cleaned and chopped. Everything was timed so that it finished cooking at exactly the same moment. Serving was formal and generous. The best serving dishes, the gravy boat that only appeared on Sundays, the carving knife that Father used with ceremony and pride. Each person received a full plate of everything. No picking and choosing, no dietary restrictions, no special requests. Conversation was expected and encouraged. Adults discussed the week's events, children shared school news, and everyone participated in family stories and gentle gossip about neighbors and relatives. The meal lasted 2 hours because eating was only part of the purpose. Everyone stayed until the last person finished eating. No one left the table early. No one brought books or toys. No one was excused until Father declared the meal officially over. This was family time, protected and prioritized above all other activities. The cleanup was as elaborate as the preparation. Every dish was washed by hand, dried, and put away in its proper place. The dining room was restored to its weekday simplicity. The good china returned to the cabinet until next Sunday. This wasn't just tradition, it was nutrition delivered through ceremony. Bodies received their biggest, most complete meal of the week, complete with protein, vegetables, starches, and genuine relaxation that aided digestion and family bonding. When meals were events, they were valued. When family time was sacred, it was protected. When Sunday dinner required effort and ceremony, it provided more than just nutrition. It provided connection, tradition, and the kind of deep satisfaction that lasted all week long. Manual kitchen work. Every meal was a workout. There were no food processors, no electric mixers, no microwave ovens, no dishwashers. Just your hands, simple tools, and the physical strength required to transform raw ingredients into nourishing meals 3 times a day, 7 days a week. Bread making was upper body conditioning disguised as necessity. Mixing flour and water by hand built grip strength. Kneading dough for 10 minutes straight developed forearms like a rock climber's. Lifting heavy loaves in and out of the oven strengthened your back and shoulders. Making mashed potatoes meant peeling dozens of potatoes with a small knife, boiling them in heavy pots, then mashing them by hand with a masher that required serious arm strength. No electric beaters, no food mills, just you against a pot of hot potatoes until they reached the perfect consistency. Chopping vegetables for a family meal meant 20 minutes of knife work that would exhaust a modern home cook. Onions, carrots, celery, potatoes, everything diced by hand with precision and speed that came from daily practice. Your knife skills were sharp because they had to be. Washing dishes meant hauling water, heating it on the stove, scrubbing every plate and pot by hand, then drying everything with towels and putting it away. No automatic dishwasher, just your hands in hot, soapy water for 30 minutes after every meal. Grinding meat meant turning a heavy crank attached to a manual grinder bolted to your kitchen table. Making hamburger for the family required arm strength and endurance. Your shoulders burned, your forearms ached, but the meat was ground exactly as coarse or fine as you wanted it. Whipping cream for dessert meant 10 minutes of vigorous arm action with a whisk or rotary beater. Your entire upper body was engaged in creating something that now takes 30 seconds with an electric mixer. The cream was better because it wasn't overwhipped, and you were stronger because you'd worked for it. Canning vegetables in summer was a full-body marathon, lifting heavy pots of boiling water, processing dozens of jars, standing for hours over hot stoves in sweltering kitchens. By the end of canning season, your body was conditioned like an athlete's. Rolling pie crust meant 15 minutes of focused arm work, applying just the right pressure to create thin, even pastry. Your wrists were strong from the rolling motion, your shoulders stable from controlling the pin. Even simple tasks required physical effort. Opening cans with a manual opener built hand strength. Stirring thick stews and sauces worked your core muscles. Lifting heavy pots on and off the stove engaged your entire body. The kitchen was your daily gymnasium. Every meal preparation was resistance training. Your body stayed strong because strength was required just to feed your family properly. When cooking demanded physical work, cooks stayed naturally fit and functional. Fewer convenience foods. The grocery store had 3 aisles, not 30. Flour, sugar, salt, and spices occupied one section. Canned vegetables and fruits filled another. Fresh produce, meat, and dairy completed the selection. There was no middle ground of processed, packaged, ready-to-eat products because they simply didn't exist yet. If you wanted bread, you made it from flour, yeast, salt, and water. If you wanted cake, you started with eggs, butter, sugar, and flour. If you wanted soup, you began with bones, vegetables, and thyme. Every food item in your house had been transformed from basic ingredients through your own labor. Instant anything was science fiction. Instant coffee was the only processed convenience available, and it was considered a poor substitute for real coffee that you ground and brewed yourself. Everything else required time, skill, and physical effort to create. Your pantry contained ingredients, not products. Whole wheat berries that you ground into flour, dried beans that you soaked overnight and cooked for hours, salt pork that you used to flavor vegetables, basic building blocks that could become anything with enough work and knowledge. Meal planning meant thinking several steps ahead. If you wanted chicken and dumplings on Wednesday, you had to buy the chicken on Monday, make stock on Tuesday, and prepare the dumplings from scratch on Wednesday. No shortcuts, no substitutes, no backup plans from boxes and cans. Snacks were whatever you made yourself. If children wanted cookies, someone had to bake them. If you craved crackers, you mixed flour and fat and rolled them thin. The effort required to create treats meant treats remained occasional rather than constant. Breakfast cereals were oatmeal, grits, or cream of wheat, whole grains that you cooked yourself with milk and maybe a touch of honey. The idea of eating sugar-coated puffs from a box would have seemed absurd to people who understood that breakfast should provide sustained energy for morning work. Even beverages required effort. Lemonade meant squeezing real lemons, adding sugar, and stirring until dissolved. Iced tea meant brewing strong tea, sweetening it while hot, then cooling it down. Every drink was made from basic ingredients when you wanted it. Your body learned to appreciate simple flavors because complex artificial tastes weren't available. Salt tasted like salt. Sweet tasted like sugar or honey. Sour came from real lemons and vinegar. Your palate was calibrated to natural intensities, not laboratory-created flavor explosions. When convenience foods were rare, cooking skills were essential. When processed options didn't exist, families ate real food by necessity. When shortcuts weren't available, the long way became automatic, and bodies thrived on the nutrition that came from ingredients rather than products. Foods were seasonal. Strawberries appeared in June and disappeared by July. Tomatoes were ripe in August and gone by September. Apples came in October and were stored in the root cellar until they ran out in March. You ate what was growing when it was growing, and you looked forward to next year's harvest for months. Your body's nutritional needs aligned perfectly with nature's timing. Spring greens appeared just when your system craved fresh vitamins after a winter of stored foods. Summer fruits provided hydration and quick energy during hot, active months. Fall's root vegetables and winter squash supplied the dense nutrition needed for cold weather. Anticipation made everything more delicious. The first strawberries of summer were a celebration. The last tomatoes of the season were treasured. Christmas oranges were miraculous treats that appeared only once a year, shipped from distant places at enormous expense. Preservation became an art form that kept families fed year-round. August meant canning dozens of jars of tomatoes, peaches, and green beans. September brought applesauce making and pickle production. October was for sauerkraut and root vegetable storage. Your winter nutrition depended on summer's hard work. Meals changed completely with the seasons. Spring meant fresh lettuce, radishes, and early peas after months of stored potatoes and canned vegetables. Summer brought fresh corn, cucumbers, and berries that you ate until you were sick of them. Fall featured hearty stews and roasts to prepare for winter's demands. Your digestive system adapted to seasonal rhythms. Light, fresh foods in hot weather. Heavy, warming foods in cold months. Your body naturally craved what was available and thrived on the variety that came with changing seasons. Storage without refrigeration required careful planning and constant attention. Apples were wrapped individually and stored in cool, dark places. Potatoes were kept in bins covered with sand. Carrots were buried in sawdust. Every vegetable had specific requirements for maximum storage life. Winter meals were planned around what had been successfully preserved. Root vegetables from the cellar, canned fruits and vegetables from summer's harvest, dried beans and grains stored in sealed containers. Creativity was required to make stored foods interesting and nutritious. Fresh meat was seasonal too. Butchering happened in cool weather when meat could be processed and stored safely. Hunting seasons provided game when farm animals were too valuable to slaughter. Even protein followed nature's calendar. When foods were seasonal, they remained special. When variety came naturally through the year's progression, meals stayed interesting without artificial enhancement. When nutrition followed nature's timing, bodies received exactly what they needed when they needed it most. Cooked breakfasts? No cereal. Breakfast was a hot, substantial meal prepared fresh every morning before the family began their day of physical labor. No one left the house with just coffee and a pastry. No one grabbed a granola bar and called it nutrition. Every person sat down to real food that would sustain them through hours of demanding work. Eggs were the foundation, scrambled in real butter, fried in bacon grease, or boiled to perfection. Fresh eggs from your own chickens, with yolks so orange they looked like sunshine, providing complete protein and essential fats that kept you satisfied until lunch. Bacon was cut thick from slabs that hung in the smokehouse, fried until the fat rendered out and could be saved for cooking vegetables later. The protein and fat combination provided steady energy without the blood sugar spikes that come from processed breakfast foods. Oatmeal was made from whole oats, cooked slowly with milk and maybe a touch of honey or brown sugar. Real grain that took 20 minutes to prepare properly, not instant packets loaded with artificial flavors and excessive sugar. Your body got sustained energy from complex carbohydrates that released slowly throughout the morning. Biscuits were mixed and baked fresh every morning, served hot with butter and jam made from last summer's berries. The flour was often ground from wheat grown on local farms, providing nutrition that hadn't been processed away in industrial mills. Pancakes were made from scratch, flour, eggs, milk, and a touch of sugar mixed in a bowl and cooked on a hot griddle. Served with real maple syrup that cost enough to be used sparingly, or honey from local beekeepers, not corn syrup flavored with artificial maple. Hash browns were made from real potatoes, peeled and grated by hand, then fried in the bacon grease until they were crispy outside and tender inside. Complex carbohydrates that provided lasting energy, not the simple starches found in processed breakfast products. Toast was made from bread baked at home, thick slices browned over the fire or in a heavy skillet, then topped with real butter that had been churned from cream. Even the simplest breakfast component required effort and provided genuine nutrition. The cooking itself was exercise. Standing at the stove for 30 minutes, stirring oatmeal, flipping bacon, scrambling eggs. Your body was already moving and working before you even sat down to eat. Breakfast preparation was part of the day's physical activity. Tomato gravy on biscuits. When the tomato harvest was abundant but the meat budget was tight, your grandmother created magic from simple ingredients. Tomato gravy became the rich, satisfying foundation for countless meals that stretched pennies while providing genuine nourishment that kept families full and strong. The process began with bacon fat saved from breakfast, heated in a heavy iron skillet until it shimmered. A handful of flour was whisked in slowly, creating a roux that would thicken the gravy. This wasn't instant anything. It required constant stirring and careful attention to prevent burning. Fresh tomatoes were scalded, peeled, and crushed by hand, their juice running red and thick with summer's concentrated flavor. These tomatoes had been picked that morning from vines you'd tended all season, not shipped from distant places and artificially ripened. The tomatoes went into the roux with salt, pepper, and maybe a touch of sugar to balance the acidity. The mixture simmered and bubbled, filling the kitchen with the smell of real food being created from honest ingredients. Your arm got a workout from constant stirring as the gravy thickened to perfect consistency. Biscuits had been mixed at dawn. Flour, lard, buttermilk, and salt worked together until the dough was just barely combined. Overmixing meant tough biscuits, so your hands learned exactly when to stop. These were rolled out with a heavy rolling pin and cut with a juice glass because few families owned proper biscuit cutters. The biscuits baked in a hot oven while the gravy finished cooking, timing perfectly, so both were ready together. Hot biscuits split open to reveal steam rising from fluffy interiors, ready to receive ladlefuls of rich tomato gravy that soaked into every flaky layer. This wasn't poverty food. It was comfort food that happened to be economical. The combination of fat, carbohydrates, and the natural umami in ripe tomatoes created deep satisfaction that lasted for hours. Bodies received substantial nutrition from simple ingredients prepared with skill and care. Egg noodles with cottage cheese and butter. This simple dish represented the kind of humble satisfaction that kept families nourished when meat was expensive and creativity was essential. Wide egg noodles, fresh cottage cheese, and real butter combined into something that was far more than the sum of its parts. Comfort food that provided complete protein and lasting satisfaction. The noodles were often homemade, rolled thin on a floured table, and cut into wide strips with a sharp knife. Making pasta required arm strength and patience, kneading the dough until it was smooth and elastic, rolling it paper thin, then cutting it into uniform strips that would cook evenly. Store-bought noodles were acceptable, but never quite as good as homemade. The commercial versions lacked the rich egg flavor and tender texture that came from using fresh eggs from your own chickens, mixed with flour and rolled by hand with love and attention. The cottage cheese was the real thing, large curds that had formed naturally from milk that was just beginning to sour. Not the processed, stabilized product we know today, but actual curds and whey that provided complete protein and probiotics for healthy digestion. Many families made their own cottage cheese from milk that was too sour to drink, but not spoiled enough to waste. The milk was heated gently until curds formed, then strained through cheesecloth until the whey drained away. What remained was fresh, creamy cheese that cost nothing but time and attention. Preparation was simple, but required timing. The noodles were boiled in salted water until tender, then drained and immediately mixed with chunks of cottage cheese and generous pats of butter. The heat from the noodles would melt the butter and warm the cheese, creating a creamy sauce without any additional cooking. Salt and pepper were the only seasonings needed. Some families added a sprinkle of paprika for color, or chopped chives from the garden for a mild onion flavor. But the dish was perfect in its simplicity. The tangy cottage cheese, rich butter, and tender noodles creating harmony without complicated flavoring. Liver and onions. Before anyone understood the science of nutrition, your grandmother knew that liver was medicine disguised as meat. This iron-rich organ meat appeared on dinner tables regularly, not because families loved its distinctive flavor, but because they understood its power to keep children strong and adults energetic. Calf liver was preferred when the budget allowed, tender, mild, and less intensely flavored than beef liver. But even beef liver, properly prepared, became a palatable source of concentrated nutrition that provided more vitamins and minerals per bite than any other single food. Preparation required skill and respect for the ingredient. The liver was sliced thin, never more than half an inch thick, then soaked in milk for 30 minutes to draw out any remaining blood and mellow the strong flavor. This wasn't squeamishness. It was technique that made the final dish more appealing. Onions were sliced thick and cooked slowly in bacon fat or butter until they were golden brown and sweet. This process took patience. Rushing meant bitter, harsh onions instead of the caramelized sweetness that would complement the liver's intensity. The cooking filled the kitchen with the promise of something delicious. The liver was dredged in seasoned flour, then fried quickly in the same pan where the onions had cooked. High heat, short cooking time, any longer, and the liver became tough and chalky. When done properly, it remained tender inside with a golden crust outside. The onions were returned to the pan to warm through and mingle with the liver, creating a harmony of flavors that made this nutritional powerhouse actually taste good. Some cooks added a splash of milk or cream to create a light gravy that bound everything together. Children who protested were reminded that liver would make them strong and smart. This wasn't just parental mythology. Liver contains more iron than any other common food, plus vitamin A, all the B vitamins and minerals that growing bodies desperately needed. Adults who worked physical jobs understood that liver provided energy that lasted. The concentrated nutrition supported hard labor better than any other single food. Men who ate liver regularly could work longer hours without fatigue. Women found that liver helped them maintain energy through demanding household tasks. Families who ate liver regularly had children with better teeth, adults with more energy, and fewer problems with anemia and fatigue. The nutrition was so concentrated that even small portions made a significant difference in overall health and vitality. Cabbage and dumplings. When winter stretched long and the root cellar was running low, cabbage became the hero of countless meals. This humble vegetable, stored since fall harvest, provided fresh nutrition through the darkest months, while dumplings transformed simple soup into a substantial meal. A whole head of cabbage would be chopped coarsely and simmered slowly in a heavy pot with water, salt, and maybe a ham bone for flavoring. The cabbage released its subtle sweetness as it cooked, creating a broth that was both nourishing and comforting on cold winter days. Dumplings were mixed quickly while the cabbage simmered. Flour, baking powder, salt, and milk stirred just until combined. Overmixing created tough, chewy dumplings, so hands learned to work fast and light, bringing the dough together with minimal handling. The dumpling dough was dropped by spoonfuls directly into the bubbling cabbage, where it steamed and puffed into light, fluffy clouds that absorbed the flavorful broth. The pot was covered immediately and left undisturbed. Lifting the lid meant fallen dumplings and disappointed diners. Timing was everything. The dumplings needed exactly 15 minutes of steady steaming to cook through properly. Your grandmother's internal clock was calibrated to dumpling perfection through years of practice. The finished dish provided complete nutrition from simple ingredients. Children who turned their noses up at plain cabbage would eagerly eat it when swimming in flavorful broth alongside fluffy dumplings. One head of cabbage and a cup of flour could feed a large family, proving that expensive ingredients weren't necessary for genuine satisfaction. Mock chicken legs, city chicken. When chicken was expensive but creativity was free, city butchers invented something magical. Cubes of veal and pork threaded onto wooden skewers, shaped and cooked to resemble chicken drumsticks. These mock chicken legs became a beloved dish that proved ingenuity could create luxury from affordable ingredients. The name city chicken came from urban areas where fresh chicken was costly and hard to find, but pork and veal were readily available from local butchers. Families could enjoy the appearance and satisfaction of chicken dinner without the chicken budget. The preparation required skill and patience. Cubes of meat were carefully threaded onto wooden skewers, alternating pork and veal to create the right texture and flavor combination. The meat had to be cut to uniform size so everything cooked evenly. Each drumstick was rolled in seasoned flour, then dipped in beaten egg, then coated with fine breadcrumbs. This triple coating created the golden, crispy exterior that made the dish so appealing. The breading process required clean hands and careful technique to ensure even coverage. The mock drumsticks were browned carefully in hot fat, turning them slowly to achieve golden color on all sides. Then they were transferred to a covered pan with liquid and baked slowly until the meat was tender and flavors had melded together perfectly. The result was surprisingly convincing. The mixed meats created a texture similar to chicken, while the skewer provided the familiar drumstick shape. Children loved eating chicken off a stick, while adults appreciated the rich flavor from the combination of different meats. When creativity met necessity, the results often exceeded expectations. When affordable ingredients were transformed through skill and effort, families ate better than their budget suggested possible.